Welcome to the High Performance Hockey Podcast. Today we're joined by the founder of Heroic Minds, Ben Fanelli. It's a great conversation we have. Ben, he's a really interesting individual. He's a former hockey player, played in the Ontario Hockey League, had a major injury early in his career, and it completely, I believe, changed the course of his life. And we speak about this idea of the gift of injury. It's led him to get into the mental side of the game. Psychotherapy created what he is doing right now in terms of his business, which is Heroic Minds. And it's a really interesting conversation. We speak about the incident. We speak about the mental side of the game. We speak about growth, development, and learning to be one with the journey. It's a very, very valuable, insightful conversation. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Ben. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Looking forward to the conversation. I want to start by going over a little bit more about your story personal. I want to talk about Heroic Minds and where it's led you to. You had a career, or an early career, like most Canadians, young kids want to continue to extend their career. You had the chance to play in the Ontario Hockey League, and then you had a quote unquote incident. And I don't know how you view that incident, if it was something. Could you talk to the audience about what happened and how massive and continues to have an impact on your life?
Go so many directions with that. Yeah, I say it is a very classic Canadian or North American journey of chasing what we're kind of convinced is the be all end all in life, to become a professional athlete. That there's this assumes, it's almost a narrative that's been created that we assume there's this top of the mountain, and this metaphorical top of the mountain is bliss, and it's everything you wanted, and it will fulfill you in all these different ways, and you'll have endless attention from people and money, and this thing's packaged up and sold to us. And then we kind of jump on the train, the one-way train to this end state. And I didn't know this at the time, the way that I talk about these things now. I didn't know it, but I was on that train like thousands, if not millions of other athletes, whether it's the NCAA, whether it's the MLB, whether it's the NBA, WNBA, PWHL, whatever. And then it's interesting because, and I'll get to my injury in a second, but it's interesting because no one else is really talking about the contrary in these sporting environments. So we're all looking around doing similar things. Well, this person's working out more and more and more and more. And this person's working harder and harder and harder. And this coach or this commercial told us that you have to obsess over this thing to have success. So you assume that that's the right thing to do. So then, and everyone else is doing. And because it's a one-way train, you don't want to fall off that train. So you just do more and more and more. And at the same time, to be able to do that, you only have 24 hours in a day, 16 maybe that you're awake. There's not much time for other things. So the pressure just generally in your kind of life journey becomes greater and greater. And so, yeah, I would say I was in the heat of that. And however, still having some success. And so I jumped into the Ontario Hockey League, and very lucky to be able to do that. And then 6 games into my OHL career, wake up in the hospital being told, hey, you're probably not going to jump on that train ever again. I was told I had 3 bleeds in my brain from being hit in a game behind my net in Kitchener, very unlucky situation, and that I might be a different person than I was the first 16 years of my life, and then I'd be lucky to make it out of the hospital. So, yeah, life was very much flipped upside down. And of course, there's a bunch of fear and uncertainty associated with the biological side, the injury itself. But I think for the sake of this conversation, it was I at that point, and I use this analogy in my work, I had to look the monster in the eyes under the bed that I was reluctant to actually look at, which is what the heck happens if this one-way train doesn't get to the top of the mountain. Something I didn't have time to consider. I think even considering that was looked at as weak. I think we assume that at times that it is. So yeah, that's where I was at. And then I was knocked off the train and had to figure it out. So yeah.
Sometimes there's a gift to injury. If that makes any sense, there's a gift. Now, I'm not talking about brain injuries. I'm talking ACLs, maybe whatever it may be. You have the time to get away from the game, retrospect, reflect, and understand, I'm lucky to play this game. It's not given, and I learn more about my body. I learn more about myself mentally and physically. I know that gift is probably the wrong word for an injury such as yours, but it taught you a lot. Looking at it, you got back into it, you competed, it was you against you, you competed in triathlons. What were some of the gifts of injury, if that even makes sense, as a result of what happened to you on that ice?
I really appreciate that articulation of it. I mean, call it a gift, call it good, call it bad, call it whatever you want. It's happening. Like these things are happening. So, geez, the gifts that came, let's call it that. Let's run with that for a second. Like what came with that was overcoming my biggest. Like here's the irony of it all, and I know there's other athletes or other people chasing these big things that they believe are going to be the be all end all. It can relate to all of that. I think one of the greatest gifts was, if that doesn't work out, life can still be absolutely unbelievable and incredible.
Yeah.
And of course, I wish I knew that. And how many times do we hear athletes say that? Oh, I wish I could do it all over again. Once they retire or move on, they say, I wish I could do it all over again and not worry so much. I wish I could do it all over again and have more fun. To me, that's sad. That's a huge chunk of our lives, right? Even let's say people stretch it out to early 30s to play. That's a huge part of your life. And to have a massive number of these athletes saying, I wish I could run it back and have more fun and not worry so much. It's like, Kate, is that not a huge indicator of maybe there's a different approach here? And I can bring in a bunch of examples of current high-performing athletes that you watch Netflix documentaries, read articles, look at messages online and their interview answers and just their approach. And it is different than this obsessive need instead of want for performance, and how that directly relates to when we are our best as performers. So there's one gift, is recognizing you don't have to need it to be successful. To want it may actually be a more efficient and effective approach. That's what I would say is one gift. And I'll go back to the piece where you said it could be a gift. That's the other thing I've started to learn and realize. I mean, this is like two gifts in one. It got me into the psychology and philosophy space, which led me into this path in my life that I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I mean, I joke around if someone said, hey, you can go play in the NHL. Remember when you were a kid and you wanted to play in the NHL and it was everything? I will give that to you. I will snap my fingers. You can have that. You just have to give up everything you're doing now. And you have to give up where you're at right now, but you can go play in the NHL for 5 years, make whatever you want. I'll give it to you. I would say no, which to me is so mind-boggling because of how powerful it was. Like my biggest fear was not getting hurt or dying or anything like that. Those were not on my mind. My biggest fear was, holy smokes, what if I don't end up in the NHL? And it can be gripping, right? And that influences performance for sure, because now you're playing with desperation instead of freedom. You're not on an adventure of discovery. You're on an adventure of failure avoidance all the time. Don't mess this up. Don't screw this up. So that inhibits our ability to actually become the best version of ourselves. So my last point that I learned, actually, there were a couple of people in my life, well, a lot of people in my life that supported me along the way. And I think one of the other gifts is knowing that all of these experiences are flowing through us, right? Like think about the headspace I just talked about, my values and what was orienting me in life. Those were so powerful. I thought they could never, ever change. I thought it was impossible for those to change. Me needing to play in the NHL, I thought, well, this is never going to change. This is going to be me forever. So if I don't make it, I'm screwed. And now I know those things can change. So what is important, or our values, if you will, can change. That's the significant thing to realize and learn. And then the other side is even our emotions and our thoughts. And Alan Watts, if you know that name, he articulates this very nicely and says, it seems we don't actually hold anything like, love. We get to hold love. And he says, no, I don't think that's true. I think we get to experience it and it flows through us. So even whether it's a positive, what we might call a positive emotion or positive thought, or negative emotion or negative thought, we don't have to hold on to it and fight it. What if we actually let it exist? We allowed it to exist. To your point, then now we can maybe call it a gift, because with allowing these things to flow through us, they can teach us things and tell us things and show us things, things we might need to change, things we might need to lean into a little more, that can make this whole journey in life even more invigorating. So I think that's another one of the gifts where, do we have to push panic and fight these negative emotions and then throw in all these protocols, 2-minute meditations, journaling, cold shower, all these life hacks we've thrown in to treat these, but what are really symptoms of a problem that maybe we haven't even uncovered yet. And I think that was another gift, is that, what if we let these things exist? What if we allowed them to flow through us, and they are teachers if we want them to be, right? I'm okay. I'm staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. every night. Generally speaking, if it's not a diagnosable sleep problem, then it's a symptom of something. Yeah. Well, let's go find why that symptom is there. What have I not solved? What have I not overcome? How am I not living in the way that a huge part of me wishes I was living? That's okay. Let's go put attention on that, solve that problem. The sleep piece takes care of itself. So instead of hyper focusing on these symptoms and even saying these symptoms are bad, what if we said, oh, they're actually indicators? And here's the best example I have. I use this all the time in my workshops, and the athletes usually laugh at me when I share this. I say, anyone in this room watch scary movies? Bunch of kids throw their hands up. And I say, okay, when you're going in to watch that ridiculous scary movie, do you know that it's going to make you feel uncomfortable, unsure, anxious, and scared? And all the athletes in the room say, yes, I know it's going to make me feel that way. And I say, but you step into it anyways. And then I say, okay, pause that thought for a second. You're going into a game 5, game 6 of the playoffs. Do you know it's going to make you feel uncomfortable, uncertain, scared? And they all say, yes, it is going to make me feel that way going into the game. And I say, okay, let's go back a step. So when you go into that scary movie, what do you label those emotions as, good or bad? And they say, oh, when I go into the scary movie, I know it's good. It's going to make me feel that way. And I say, okay, when you go into game 6 in playoffs and it's making you feel that way, what do you label those emotions as? And they say bad. And so in one environment, we say these emotions are good. And then another environment, we say they're bad. When they're bad, we then have to solve them, and they become a problem that we need to find a solution for. In the scary movie, we don't label them as a problem, so we don't try to solve them. We let the emotions flow through us. We hopefully enjoy that scary movie in some way. I'm not a huge fan of scary movies, but we somehow find a way to allow them to exist such that they're not a problem. Now we just get to experience life with those emotions, and it's not the end of the world.
Yep.
And so I think there's an aspect there too where I learned that while these things are uncomfortable and they suck sometimes for sure, I think we exacerbate how difficult they're going to be to experience when we say that they're bad and they're a problem, because now we add this tension, and going back to Alan Watts, now we're holding on to them instead of allowing them to flow through us. So a lot of life lessons from the experience I had with my injury, and then subsequently endeavoring to get back to playing and being able to jump back on the ice and play again.
Couple of things to piggyback, because I know there was a lot to unpack, which is excellent. I think I can speak for myself if N equals 1. I mean, a young 23 or 24-year-old done playing hockey had an identity crisis. I always identified as a hockey player. It was really tough for me. It wasn't Ben Fanelli. It was Ben Fanelli D. He had 16 points last year and 15. He had X amount of penalty minutes. Yeah, he had a good career. He was good, or hey, this guy played with this guy, and oh yeah, he's a good coach because he played here or this. You had this identity crisis, and that's hard to untangle. And the other thing, and I'm just making comments here because, listening to your dialogue here, the other thing is, you talked about this idea of just more. Mentor of mine calls it the greatest American myth, and you can call it North American, Canada as well. And this idea is more is better. And the reality is you keep throwing things on. In the world of the physical preparation space, it's actually quite scary right now. You've got the season ending. You've got summer skates, spring skates, strength and conditioning. It's not good enough now, Ben, to have a strength and conditioning coach. Now you have a speed coach. It's not good enough to have a speed coach. Now you have a power coach. You have so many cooks in the kitchen. And I'll be honest with you, I completely see the value of quote unquote mental skills coach. But even then, we have all these cooks in the kitchen. It's like you get 15 guys or girls or whoever it is. How many tools do you need? I always tell the kids, like, come up with your goal. And again, maybe we're speaking in different aspects from the mental to the physical, but I always say try to trim the fat. It's not how many things can you add to get to that goal. How many things can you take away from your list to reach that goal? I guess that TMS, too much shit syndrome, I see a lot. And I don't say, it's just so many. It's so hard to untangle right now in this current landscape, which opens up a whole other narrative of issues and problems to solve, So those are just comments I see all the time in strength and conditioning,
No, I love that. The TMS, I love that acronym. Yeah.
It's
incredible. Yeah, no, I think you bring up a good point. Like the other side to that is the more, this is from what I've seen in my work, especially not just the empirical evidence, is that the more of these things they're adding to their repertoire, there's an assumption that now they have more control, but they're not putting the control in themselves internally. It's control externally. So now I have to go see my speed coach, my strength coach, my lifting coach, my shooting coach. So now this control is put into all these other things around us we've been told we need. And then it's almost a reductionist approach that we're adding more, but to be amazing in sport, to be elite in sport, you don't have these things happening one at a time. They have to simultaneously, you have to be able to access all these abilities simultaneously at the same time. But we're now hyper focusing and fixating on one thing and worrying about these things. Did I do enough on the strength room? Did I do enough with my speed coach? Did I do enough with my skill coach? Right? All these things. And now that contradicts where performance comes from, which is a place of paying attention and not thinking, right? You're paying attention to the immediacy of the moment and endeavoring to do the best that you can in each moment without the fear of the future, the fear of the past, thinking about, have I done enough? Thinking about what other people think. But in our training protocols, like here's the example I give, Monday to Friday, it's hyper focusing on all those details, the TMS, all the details you just talked about. Check all those boxes, hit all those. Thinking brain is totally turned on. We correlated that with our sport, thinking consciously, and no mistakes, grind Monday to Friday, hard. And then Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday, let's say competition day, everyone changes their narrative all of a sudden. Coaches, players, they all completely change the narrative that we had Monday to Friday. And now it becomes be free, have fun, don't worry. And it's like, what? We just practiced the complete opposite for the last 5 days. So 85% of our time is grind, hard work, hyper focus, fixate on little variables. And then we want to all of a sudden magically flip the light switch and be free, have fun, and not worry Saturday, Sunday. And that's where I would argue when you really pay attention in these Netflix documentaries and you look at the ones that are elite, go across the board, golf, Formula One, hockey documentaries, football like tennis is another brilliant one. Really I watch these a little bit like a nerd now and really look into their behaviors and what they're saying and how they approach their sport. And again, you see it across the board that these ones that are at the top, and so I think sometimes it's misconstrued or maybe even it is arrogance. Like I can't totally, sparse that out, but it's like the ones that are the elite, they're doing it for themselves. A lot of them are doing it different than what the textbooks say or what the Nike commercial says. Alcaraz's documentary, I believe, is even all about him doing it his way. And he's free and he has fun and he's curious. I think I told you in the past story about a buddy of mine, Mud Shifley, that everyone says he's a hockey nerd and he's obsessed over the game. And I think we have to be aware, just our objective reality, what we're seeing isn't necessarily what's going on. Because yes, you could easily say, oh, Mark's obsessed and he does too much and he does all these little things. So while we're having this conversation around TMS, there's a difference between doing more manually and forcing it and plugging it in because you have to, and using stress. And that's one approach, which I see, unfortunately, is more common. But if you look at Mark's example, I like to say he's won before he's actually won on the ice, because I've seen him spend 10 minutes with his skill coach.
Yeah.
Talking about, and he's already at this point, he'd already been one of the top centermen in the NHL for a long time. And he spent 10 minutes talking about where his thumb should be on the top of his stick, whether it's 3 millimeters this way or 3 millimeters that way. And you might say, oh, Mark's hyper obsessed and he's focusing too much and doing. So here's where I want to also be, devil's advocate. That's not driven by desperation. That's not driven by, I have to do this or I'm not going to be successful. That is driven by a deep curiosity and passion for the art that is hockey. That's different than manually plugging this in out of desperation, because if I don't do this, mom's going to be upset, my agent's going to be upset, I'm not going to become this version of myself that I believe will take me to the top of the mountain. It's different. And so you look through a lot of these other athletes and you see something very similar. Scotty Scheffler, going into his second potential Masters to win. And he says, golf isn't a huge thing in my life. I don't really identify as a golfer personally. And then he goes out after saying that, wins his second Masters, comes back in front of the microphone, and you can see it. He's like, yeah, I'm just looking to answer all these questions and get out of here because I want to go spend time with my family. It's like, that's detached engagement. So you're engaged with parts of the sport that bring out that effortless freedom and discovery and passion that most of us have as kids when we start sport. So you're engaged with that part of it, but you're detached from the overthinking, hyper focus. What does everyone else think? Past, future, all that stuff. And so someone might hear that and say, oh yeah, that sounds great philosophically. But I challenge people and say, but go back to the Monday to Friday example. When do you actually practice that? When do you leave your hockey gear or your running gear or your soccer? When do you leave that at the track or the field or the rink and actually go live and do other things, so that you do have that detached engagement and you're actually building a really powerful relationship with sport? And I would say a lot of us don't do that, and we're not encouraged to do that.
Yeah, that's such a good point. The contrast that you brought up against Scheifele, and it's also a difficult thing. When parents ask, they'll ask our advice, and I'm not comparing, a National Hockey League superstar to a 15-year-old U15 player, right? But the question is, how much is too much? We hear this all the time: play multiple sports, and I'm a champion of that. Play multiple sports, but sometimes though, there's certain kids that just love and have a passion and say, you know what, I don't want to play another sport. I want to go to the rink and focus on my skills. This is driven by me. So, it's a delicate balance, and I get it as well. Obviously, when you're at the top of the food chain, those small little things matter, but you got to love doing it, right? You got to come back and want to love to do it. It's got to be driven by the player, whether he's U15 or the National Hockey League superstar. You got to want to put in that time and be passionate to put in that time, because then you are, quote unquote, mentally free. It's not a job. It's not I got to go train now. No, does that make sense? But it's a delicate balance there, at least in the youth population, right? Too much, or it's driven by me and I'm enjoying doing it and I want to do that,
Totally. And keep in mind, you talk about having that love and passion, whether it's 15 or the NHL, along that journey. If we actually talked about the reality at the end of the journey, I think it would clear a lot of that up. If we recognize that there is no top of the mountain, right? Like if you recognize, look at all these people with way more money than others, or the 3 extra cars in the driveway, or the 2 or 3 extra homes that they have that you might not have. And you really spend an hour or 2 hours talking to these people and realize their life isn't necessarily pure gold and bliss. And they have all these stressors and challenges, even though they've gotten to the metaphorical top of the mountain, but it hasn't actually led them to this place of bliss that we think. I think that makes us realize then, okay, maybe it is more about the journey and how we're going about pursuing these things. Then maybe I should ensure that I'm having more fun and I'm curious, and it's more of an adventure than it is this constant requirement and tension and fear and doing everything we can to not screw this up. It would now make more sense of, okay, maybe the journey is more important, because when I get there, it's not going to solve everything. I'm actually still on a journey, even if I get there, whether I like it or not. And our bodies are structured that way. I won't get into the details on that, but we know that with the dopamine and the serotonin and all these, you can get into that side of things as well, that very clearly shows it is this journey, and we need to feel progress and growth and adventure, engaging with other things and like a new things that keep us stimulated and excited for life. But again, I won't go into those weeds. I just think when we talk about that, it's not going to be the be all end all, even though that's how we like to market things in sport, that top of the mountain does exist. I think it could help a lot of athletes in enjoying the journey and the day to day if they're able to recognize that.
Excellent. Slight pivot here. One of the other gifts that came of this journey that you're on and that you've been on, specifically your OHL career, was the birth of Heroic Minds, right? What is it? Talk to the listener here on what is it. I know it says it's a Spotify of performance conversations for psychoeducation, but maybe a better question is, I always come back to it in the physical preparation space. How can it help the player? What does it do?
Awesome. Well, to your point, you summarized that nicely. We are trying to shift away from a lot of these stigmatized verbiage around mental well-being or performance, and creating a resource that isn't just a resource you go to on a rainy day or when things aren't going well. We are endeavoring to create a platform that is integrated into as many people's lives as possible. Right now, we are starting in the athletic space. Essentially, yeah, it's a passive resource to engage with professionals from around the world on all things performance, emotion regulation, career planning, life skills, etc., that an individual can go to and not just engage with the content, but then privately and securely connect with these professionals, book sessions, do the virtual calls and interact with these professionals all in one place, such that it's not a resource outside of our regular day-to-day resources. It's already integrated into our life. There's no stigma or challenge to jump onto it and interact with it or those professionals on the platform. So yeah, so on the mental prep side, now I should maybe think of a better way to explain this, but for a very long time, and people still do this today, I think it's shifted. Maybe now more popular might be meditation.
Yep.
However, there used to be a time where every Sunday people would meet and go to what was called church or mass. And I'm not focusing on the messaging specifically or the structure of theology and religion. That's not what I'm focused on. All I'm focused on is there used to be a time where for an hour, for 60 minutes, we would go to a place and it was a community, and it was about improving our lives and loving other people and trying to beautify the world around us, which I would call heroism as opposed to religion. And you're just showing up for 60 minutes. Am I doing what I enjoy doing? Am I doing it in a way that's effective and efficient? Are there things that I could change? Are there aspects to my life that I could improve and that aren't good enough right now, that could be better? And you would do that for 60 minutes a week. How do we create that without it needing to be church or mass? How do we create a resource where people could do that? Maybe it's a couple times a week, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here. They have this resource in front of them and they can go do that to make sure, this is the ACT approach, acceptance and commitment therapy, or theory if you want, where you recognize where you are, not in a way that it's a problem where you are, but just really recognizing here's where I am in my life, behaviorally, emotionally, cognitively, etc., socially, and here's where I'd like to be. Okay, now I can sit and think, okay, what could I change? What could I keep doing? What's working? And it'll make sure that I'm moving in the direction I want to go. That feels good. I don't know if there is a more powerful human experience than knowing, holy smokes, I'm on this amazing adventure and I feel and I know that I am moving in the direction of something greater. I think that's one of the most invigorating human experiences. And that's the goal with Heroic Minds, to allow individuals to access that feeling of growth and progress and discovery, putting an army of professionals in people's hands so that they can do that day to day, week to week, month to month.
I heard this once. I think it was Tony Robbins. He asked, what drives you? What makes you happy? What gets you up in the morning every day? And he came with one word and I loved it. He said, traction, some sort of growth. In our gym, we call it one day better. Be better today than you were yesterday every day. So we use that hashtag one day better. It's something I stole from my brother Misha, and we've tried to live it on our gym walls. gosh, the past 20 years. But another question, a piggyback question. I mean, specifically, maybe towards the end of your career, you were dealing with it. Certainly not in my day. I'm older than you. It's hard to stay level. My dad would always say to us, life is lived in the valley, not the mountains. The mountains, not many things grow in the mountains. There's not a lot of air up there. There's not a lot of good soil, right? Like growth comes in the rain and the dirt and the callus and the hands and the work. That doesn't mean though, when you don't climb a mountain every once in a while, you celebrate. Yeah. But that's where growth occurs. Having said that, the big elephant in the room, like social media, everything's a mountain. So when you're a 12 to 18-year-old kid and you hop on Instagram or your TikTok, well, everyone's, I'll give you a perfect example. The Florida Panthers just won the Stanley Cup. Young kids hop on that and think, man, that's, gosh, I mean, it's a celebration. Someone wins a marathon. Scotty Scheffler wins this. Then you get all the other posts of all the high school kids doing. How do you stay grounded and understand that, hey, man, I got to be one with the valley here. This is not about the mountain all the time. What you're seeing are the peaks, but that's not where life's lived.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful, so this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is really the goal with Heroic Minds. And I know there's professionals on the platform sharing ideas very similar to what you just shared. I would say I'm kind of going to answer in I'm going to take a sidestep and think a lot of that becomes a problem. I believe when we're looking at it from a sense of what we feel we deserve. Because if we see other people, you could just stay on the surface and say, oh, you get jealous and you think about other people's successes and that, wow, I need more of that because I've been in the valley for so long. Geez, I need that. I need this thing in the valley so bad. Like, I think you're onto something really powerful there. I would say an approach that I take to help combat that is that, and take social media as an example. Like, yes, you're looking at other people's lives. But I think the reason it becomes a problem is because you're comparing it to your life and you're comparing it to, well, my life should be different or my life should be this way, right? Should be this way. And so I say what I believe to be, and this goes back into heroism, is realizing life isn't about you. It's for you, right? There's a difference there. Life is for you to discover and evolve and grow and pursue and endeavor and dream, but it's not about you, right? Like, that's what I think is the difference. It's not about you, it's for you. And so now all of a sudden, if it's not for me, like it's not about me and all this stuff and I need this and I should get to the top of the mountain and I should be a gold medalist. It's for you to discover and interact with. And so now it doesn't matter if I'm at the top of the mountain or not. And I'll bring in a quote from 50 Cent that I love. He says, some people live better than others with or without money. And that's because they spend time doing things that are more important to them. They spend time with, from their perspective, better people that are more loving and supportive and energizing for them. And so, yeah, 10,000 square foot house, 800 square foot, 400 square foot apartment. The challenge, the opportunity for you there is to make that unbelievable and beautify the heck out of what you have currently in your environment and in your experience in life. That's the challenge there, is to find that invigoration in life, regardless of where you are. That's winning. Right now, you don't need the top of the mountain. Now you don't even need to move. Now you can find that right where you are. But again, I think social media reinforces the opposite, that you need something else to be okay. Right. And that feeds into, look at the state of quote unquote mental health today. Well, I can't be okay on my own, changing how I'm living and changing what I'm pursuing and how I'm interacting with other people. No, that won't fix things. I need the chamomile tea and the melatonin and the 2-minute meditations and the journaling and all these external tools to make me feel okay, different than I need to be the CEO of the company. And I need to have 2 Teslas in my driveway and I need to have 10,000 followers on Instagram for me to be okay, which reinforces this idea that I'm not okay just myself. I need these external ideas and wants filled or I'm not going to be okay. So yeah, I think it's a challenge, but I think it contradicts the idea of being able to trust ourselves, which is what confidence is rooted in. The ability to trust that we're right where we need to be, the ability to trust that I have enough in me today to be great, which I think we need to talk more about. So I really appreciate that question. I think it's one that needs a lot more a lot more discussion.
Man's Search for Meaning, one of the best books I've ever read. I've read it twice. I need to probably read it another 10 times. One of the best sellers. I think it was in the 1940s, 50s it was written. And the three takeaways were: do good deeds, give yourself to someone or something, and find meaning in suffering. And this was written by a psychologist who had literally survived the Nazi, Germany. He was in a concentration camp. His entire family was lost and killed. And he wrote that book, and it's one of the best sellers, but it's an unbelievable book, unbelievable resource. I think the hardest one for me, and you've done a great job of this, and I mean this, like, find meaning in suffering. Look at your story. Like, look what you've made out of it. I struggle, like I say, I find meaning out of suffering. We lost our father in 2020, and, he was 74 years old. And, I go to the cemetery every day to see my dad, and I'm thankful that I got to spend 74 years with him. I see kids that are 12 years old, that are 9 years old. I see Marines that don't come back and lost their lives. Yet I still want that time with them, trying to find that meaning, in suffering. And it's tough to do. Sometimes I don't think time really heals that. It just finds a way around it, like water weaving in and out of rocks. But it is a powerful lesson in life, that life is things happen in life that are really, really tough to deal with. And it's not about money. It's giving yourself to people. It's doing good deeds. It's leaving things better than when you left them. And you've got to find a way to use these difficult circumstances as fertilizer and not the aforementioned other stuff, right? So it's an interesting book and really, really valuable resource that I recommend all of our listeners listen to and read, rather. It's outstanding. Could you let everybody know more about the Heroic Minds app, and then maybe talk about it, where people can find it if they're a player, and then what can be expected? If I'm a U18 player and I want to be a part of this, how does it work?
Yeah, very simple. The platform, people can jump onto it right now on the mobile, any of the app stores out there, Google Play, Apple App Store. Jump on Heroic Minds, create an account. You can join for free. You can access more content if you'd like and pay for a monthly subscription. That's totally the individual's prerogative. And then we're building out our web app as well, so that it can be accessed just through a website, right? Again, being very inspired by Spotify, it endeavoring to flow, and the experience should be just like Spotify. That's our goal. So yeah, people can find it, type it on Google, on their phone or on their desktop, and go from there. Get involved, interact with content, leave comments, share content, reach out to professionals privately if you want to take that step further with a specific professional on the platform. And then we're growing right now we're calling them just partnerships with, whether it's individual teams, whether it's associations, and it's becoming quite exciting now across the country here in Canada and even into the US, creating some pretty powerful partnerships with leagues and sporting associations, and getting into the first responder space now as well, and fire, police, paramedics, to also provide this resource to individuals like that. So yeah, it's an exciting time. And I always say, jump on the platform, and feedback is king. So if anyone hears this and checks it out and has feedback for myself and my team, that is more than welcome, as this journey is really starting to pick up momentum.
Excellent. What's the best place for someone to reach out to you on the app? Do you have an email, or is it something where the best thing is get on the app and reach out that way?
A bunch of different channels to connect with me. It could be through the platform, finding my profile on the platform and shoot me a message there, or emails ben@heroicminds.live, and then old Instagram or Google, right? You type in Ben Fanelli or you type in Heroic Minds, you will find me. Reach out anyway, and yeah, I would love to connect.
The man, the myth, the legend. Our guest today is Ben Fanelli. Ben, thanks so much for joining us, my friend.